Hey folks! Hope you're having a jolly old time, because it turns out my brain cannot come up with video ideas that will not earn me the disdain of the Wuwa community, as well as the shiny medal of Hoyoshill despite the fact I don't play Hoyo games. But that's alright with me. That's why I have an interesting little topic of conversation for everybody, in which I will share a theory that will only earn me more scorn, and I more than welcome it. I'm happy to be a villain, even if it is a D-list one. I will not be another voice of brainless positivity. Other people can and will do that for me. So for the sake of a game I love, I have no shame or misgivings about being negative. It is truly incredible to witness a community's childish paranoia and an ability to hear criticism about their object of obsession. Feels like I'm lambasting Belle Delphine over here. The Queen of Simps herself, and apparently Kuro is the king. So, without further ado, let's get into it. We all know that for the time being, Kuro Games has decided to abdicate from weaponizing one of the biggest, easiest, and most profitable pieces of FOMO on the face of the earth: power creep. Your Gions and your Jinsees are still more than capable of giving endgame content an absolute ass-whooping, provided they're built and you possess the mechanical ability of a semi-functional human being. Of all the new characters that were introduced in 2.x, one can argue only Carlotta is anywhere near a must-pull, at least if you're a newer player. Brant and Rochia mirror each other with their lackluster companion quests and the fact they require heavy investment to be useful. While Cantarella isn't rated that highly due to the fact she doesn't quite have a significant level of synergy with any character we currently have available to us. What about Phoebe, you may ask? That's the sparkling elephant in the room though, isn't it? Phoebe and the soon-to-be-released Zani may very well be the first iteration of Wuwa's version of weaponizing FOMO. Exclusive character synergies via status effects. I'm gonna go ahead and assume three things going forward for the sake of the theory. First, I will assume Kuro won't go back to the old roster to give them a facelift in the form of inserting status effects into their kits. I don't think this assumption is unfriendly to Kuro for one simple reason. It's a thankless job that will not generate that much profit. Not to mention, it may potentially tank it. Nightmare Echoes don't compare to this. Even though I think it would be a fantastic move for the game itself, it just wouldn't follow the principle of a gacha game. As the brilliant business savant and mastermind, Tectone himself will tell you, companies want to make money. I bet you're reeling from that revelation, aren't you? But yeah, it wouldn't be worth the effort from a making bank perspective. Second, I will assume there will be no enemies or stages that specifically ask you to bring status effect units in order to break a shield or some predatory BS mechanic like that. On one hand, that assumption is naive if my theory is correct, but on the other, it would just be boring and yeah, enjoy your Kuro-branded Hoyo shit product if they were to do something like that. At that point, you'd need to have room temperature IQ in Celsius to bat for them. So, I'll go ahead and assume they won't do it. And third, the Zani plus Phoebe combo isn't going to be an absolutely busted duo that begins rolling the power creep boulder down the hill on our sorry asses. At that point, it's GG well played. Kuro lasted a year. I'm gonna give a quick rundown of the team building dynamics and character synergies we've had in Wuwa up to the point of Phoebe's release and any further expansions on the status effect mechanics, just to set up the contrast of what we have and what we are likely getting from now on. For the sake of simplicity, I also won't talk about things like quick swap. We'll stick to the simple hyper carry team setup since it's the easiest and most general way to play the game. Right now, most character interactions boil down to buffs of attribute damage such as fusion, buffs to damage types such as basic attack, coordinated attacks for certain characters, and general team-wide buffs from our dedicated supports. Take someone like Cantarella. She has coordinated attacks for a character like Jinsei, resonant skill damage buff for Carlotta, or havoc damage for Camellia. She can give all of those characters something. In that regard, she's rather flexible and all of those characters have other units that can support them instead. It's a two-way road. This flexibility will be significantly diminished if characters start having mechanics that only specific characters can interact with. Take a character like Phoebe. No matter what you do, you will always want a character that can apply or consume Spectral Frazzle. In other words, Rover and/or Zani. Phoebe's confession state was a nothing burger on release because Rover cannot consume Spectral Frazzle. But Zani can, and that's a big deal. The writing is on the wall. If future characters stop relying on their sub DPS giving them resonance skill damage, and instead rely on a sub DPS that can interact with the status effects, then we have a potential problem and Kuro's potential play for weaponizing FOMO against players. You wanna mean Zani, right? I mean, Spectral Rover is gonna be an okay free-to-play cope band-aid, but come on, you really want Phoebe and her confession state to make the most out of Zani. The only way this is not going to be a problem is if they add status effects to the older members of the roster, and I don't think they will do that. This is not rocket science. What do you need out of a sub DPS for Carlotta, just as an example? Resonant skill damage. You have Zhezhe, Brandt, Cantarella, Tao Chi, or Lumi if you hate your hands and want to lose her buff halfway through Carlotta's liberation. With this dreaded future potentially staring us in the face, we're gonna be looking at characters that as they release will have an increasing lack of synergy with older members of the roster that aren't Rover's various forms. And as the roster expands, Rover is going to start being able to pull less and less of the cart, unless Kuro makes it so every form of Rover is treated as a separate character. Assuming you're not gonna be pulling on absolutely everything and spending money to get every single character, new characters will progressively slot worse and worse into our already existing teams. We're gonna move from, oh cool, this character does resonance skill damage, I have 4 that buff that, to, oh damn, this guy consumes anal taser stacks to do his damage. Damn it, I should have pulled on that other character 2 patches ago. Good thing it's actually getting a rerun. Lo and behold, what are we getting? That's right, Zani, a character that consumes Spectral Frazzle to do her damage. Something we didn't know back when Phoebe released, though you could make the educated guess since the confession state was useless. Good thing she's getting a rerun. I called this, and I'm gonna choose to believe Kuro dropped those 18 extra rerun banners to disguise the fact they wanted to rerun Phoebe to double dip on Zani. Wanna hide the fact you're double dipping? Vision-tuple dip? I bet you didn't know the double equivalent for 20. Turns out it's Vision-tuple. Neat, isn't it? And then there's the problem of Kuro being absolutely opaque about what they're gonna do with this whole thing. We don't get banner roadmaps which would alleviate these problems a tiny bit. And we have no clue how they intend to introduce these status effects because Kuro sucks at communicating if their response to the anniversary backlash is anything to go by. They teased Havoc Bane with Cantarella by slotting the word Bane into her drip marketing, where it could have been replaced by tons of other words, so it can't possibly be an accident. But then she didn't come with Havoc Bane. Spectral Rover got Spectral Frazzle, Phoebe came out with Spectral Frazzle, then every other limited character in 2.x didn't come with any status effects. Now we have Arrow Rover who does, Zani obviously will, and I believe so will Chikona. Honestly, it feels like this is an experiment to test the players' patience and wallets. Either that or they're waffling around to give themselves the benefit of the doubt, but I see through their ploy. So in short, Kuro may be trying to figure out how to capitalize on these status effects in order to potentially double dip with their characters. They could have done this with Rochia and Cantarella. I skip Rochia because she just doesn't appeal to me in the slightest. Cantarella very much does, so now I'd be pressured to pull on Rochia's rerun in order to maximize Cantarella's potential. I have no idea when I'd ever get that chance again after all. This is not a reach. I have no need to reach because it's already coming with Zani and Phoebe. Anyone not alarmed by this should take off their rose-tinted glasses. Kuro tried to give people the short end of the stick with the anniversary rewards, got backlash and are now going, guys, calm down, there's actually all these fantastic rewards we didn't bother talking about. Of course, we don't know the full extent of Kuro's plans, but we can see the broad direction the game is heading. You may call this doom posting, I just call it being intelligent. Seeing a train barreling my way while I'm tied to the tracks and going, huh, that's not good. Next video, I'm gonna talk about the rerun banner and why it should just be permanent, while keeping in mind some of the things I've already talked about here. So yeah, cheers folks!